Hey everybody, welcome back to Breaking Strings. We've got an old-time guest here, Beirs, as a Berlin-based professional classical guitarist and professional yoga practitioner, so that's a hybrid career, very impressive. His album, Widening Circles, was released by Azika Records in 2013, and his most recent album, Blue Sky Dreams, is a fusion between classical training, original music, and mantras. So we're the original gangsters of this podcast. We actually started doing this, what was essentially a podcast on Instagram about, I think, 2 years ago. Is that right, Ben?
Oh, geez. Was that already 2 years ago? Are you serious?
It flew by, yeah, for sure. I'm thinking...
Oh, that's a little scary. It's like a little corona time warp or something.
Yeah, because my son was just a newborn, and I remember just being completely exhausted having these conversations with you at night, having so much fun.
If you would ask me, I would say maybe a year, maybe tops a year. Yeah, like 8 months, I would say.
Yeah, after the pandemic time, it's like a weird time warp that we've been going through for the past like at least 3 years now. So.
Oh my goodness! Wow, I'm happy to be here. It's an honor.
I got a lot of fun questions. You know, since we are kind of podcast aficionados, because we have been kind of doing this together, I have like a really good rhythm with you. So I want to ask kind of like random questions that I haven't gotten to ask you in private, in person, or on any of the other times that we've spoken. So the first question is this. Before Berlin, you were based in Paris. Recently, I was in Paris. I didn't want to leave Paris at all. It was beautiful. It's for me, artistically speaking, as far as getting inspiration from a city, there were certain points in that city that I felt if I brought my guitar, I would be composing an opus in a matter of a couple of hours. Literally, it was something magical. Hit me that in my life, not many times has that happened, and I've been in very gorgeous cities before, always in awe of architecture, culture, food,
Philadelphia,
people.
Baltimore,
Sure. Well,
anyway,
hey,
sorry,
every
keep going.
city.
I'm interrupting your flow.
I found ways to get very highly inspired in Baltimore too, but you catch
Actually,
my
there's
drift.
a lot of great art both in Philly and Baltimore, to be honest.
Agreed.
Anyway,
so I guess
why did I leave?
to simplify that question,
Why the heck?
Why?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things here. I mean, I agree with you. Paris is freaking magical. For if you're a creative person, I think there's just so much happening. There's all this fashion stuff obviously happening. And then there's a lot of cultural stuff, so much history, so many artists to be inspired from. You just walk in any corner and you're like, oh yeah, this whatever, this writer, this composer lived here or whatever, hung out here. So it is very magical. Living there, on the other hand, that shifts things a little. And I mean, also, everybody has their own experience. I think for me personally, I have no regrets. I have a lot of gratitude. Honestly, in hindsight, my gratitude is to have gotten to study music there, to learn from Judicaille Parois, and also to just get to sit in on these singing, like sight singing and harmony classes. Where I was like 29 and I'm sitting in with these 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids, and I couldn't keep up. And it was amazing, the level of, they just throw a piece on, they just give you whatever, some standard repertoire piece, and you just have to solfege the crap out of it right away. I don't know. It was really, for me, I think in hindsight, I didn't go there. Honestly, I went there. I was like, I want to live in Europe. I want to I want to live in, Paris is what I know. It's the city that I know the most since I was playing there. Coming to France with Maud, my former duo partner with the Duo Transatlantique, and so it was like, it was just familiar to me. And yeah, but I didn't really go there to I was so lucky to get to study with Judy Carrel and kind of have his guidance. But I was like, no, that's good. But like, I've already done a lot of studies. But in hindsight, it was like, this was so transformative. And probably everything that you said also played a role, like just being in such wild, crazy, and also magical place. But, when I met my wife, she'd been living there for 6 years. I had been living there for 5. And we were both like, we got to get out of the city, because it's just, when you're in there day in, day out, like, it's one thing, if you're from there, or you've got a really nice paying job or something. It's another if you're kind of schlepping. It's very close. It's like, now I live in Berlin, Berlin is insanely spread out. It's like I can bike for like an hour and a half to 2 hours and I'm still not out of Berlin. No, maybe not that much, but maybe like an hour I can bike for before I'm out of Berlin, And yeah, in Paris, like, it's just so small and there's so many people all the time, and it really is draining. It can be anyway, if you're not getting out of there regularly, if you don't have a nice country house, if you don't have a whole support system, which I didn't, I was an American in Paris. So it was there was a lot of challenges, but honestly, I can say now, looking back, like, I have no regrets whatsoever. I learned, it really stretched me. It pushed me in new directions that I never would have imagined. And now I'm in Berlin, and I appreciate Berlin even more, probably because it's got such a different vibe than Paris. But Berlin is also amazing for musicians and artists. So yeah, I feel very fortunate also. Yeah.
Do you feel like you need sort of a stimulus to recharge and reach a point where you feel really, really uncomfortable to perhaps grow? I mean, in your both as a professional, because in your larger professional life, both as a musician and a yoga practitioner, because I feel like, what you were saying on the tail end of that, like living in Paris, is that it definitely put you in a uncomfortable spot. It wasn't your home country, not the home language. I know you are, a proficient French speaker, but still, I mean, it's just culturally, economically, being thrown into a different country and being there for quite a while. It's a different system. It's a whole different thing after the first 3, 4, 5 months of living there.
Yeah.
Now it's more permanent. And you begin to realize the difficulties. I was joking. I was in Paris for like a week or
and
less.
You had a lot of delicious croissants, and you were like, I want to stay here forever. Yeah.
It did have a huge impression on me. Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about kind of being pushed, because it just reminds me of a conversation I just had with a student yesterday. I don't really even know how we were talking about language, actually, and how, she was saying she met up with an American friend of hers. This is a German student, and, how she kind of she can understand English, but then she kind of has to translate it, and then she has to respond, and she thinks differently. And I was talking about how it kind of shapes, language shapes our reality, how we think and how we can think shapes our reality. And so I actually, I don't know, it kind of led to two cool, interesting things. Like, one was not music related, the other was music related. The non-music thing was, do you know Murakami? Haruki Murakami, the Japanese kind of surrealist, I don't know how to describe his writing. He's a pretty well-known author. And I got inspired by him. You can check. I mean, you guys can check him out. Whoever's listening, Haruki Murakami, great Japanese author, and he actually, from what I understand, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he actually writes his novels first. He writes everything in English first and then translates it back to Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I actually just started taking composition lessons from Marek Pazieczny, you know, the Polish guitarist composer, awesome guy.
Love his
And
work,
you know,
yeah.
he writes on the piano, you know, and then translates it to the guitar, so to speak. You know, so it's like when you like, yeah, you get this challenge of like you're not in your native idiom, you know, but all of a sudden, because of that, you actually are finding new ways to express yourself.
He's one of those players also, I want to make a note that he plays his compositions so well, and I don't mean just from the technical perspective. It's like highly, highly expressive down to the very detail that it almost feels intimidating to start one of his works. I love a lot of his compositions
I've
that
also
I've heard.
felt that I'm not playing this nearly as well as this guy plays.
Right,
he's a
right.
really tough, I mean, really good player, and a really,
Absolutely.
you know, it's so funny because he just taught a workshop at the music school where I teach.
Oh,
And
very
so,
cool.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, and we met up after, like, we hadn't seen each other for like 10 years, and I actually commissioned on that Widening Circles album, I commissioned a piece from him, and I had always been super inspired by his approach to guitar, you know, and also like just that he just doesn't give a flying hoot. He just does his thing, you know, and I got that more than ever when he came to Berlin, and I was like, hey man, you know, would you ever want to like do lessons? He was like, okay, well, send me your stuff, and I sent him my stuff, and he actually kind of liked it, which I was like amazed. I was like, he kind of likes it.
Great.
So we're actually redoing my old piece. It's a real trip because I wrote this in 2014. It was the last piece I wrote, Fluidity, this 3-movement piece. And I'm gonna rewrite it and re-record it and republish it. It's crazy though to revisit that now because I was in such a different place in my life, and now I'm you know, I just see it with a completely different. Yeah, it's amazing. Anyway.
I told you before, I really love your piece, Awakened Awareness. That was also from the earlier album.
That's the first piece I ever wrote, yeah.
Yeah, you wrote that under the direction of Roland Dians, is that right?
Well, I played it for him. He didn't, I mean, Dians, you know, I got to play it for him, and he just said he liked the ending. Because it kind of ends suddenly, sort of, and so he said you could call it fugace, which I guess means like fleeting in French, you know, or something like this, you know, kind of like, he's like, you should call it fugace. But he liked it, which, you know, was amazing at the time that he was just like,
sure.
You know, I mean, I also think, you know, I just studied with him for a semester. He probably wasn't going to take the, you know, didn't really have the time or energy to like go through everything point by point, but he was encouraging, which at that point, I mean, yeah, anything the guy said to me that was positive, I was like, holy crap, you know?
Could we go back just a little bit to Judicael, Perrois, right? I'm a terrible...
Yeah, you said it. You got it.
Okay.
You got it. No,
okay.
You got it.
Okay, I know everybody mispronounces my name, so with vengeance, I mispronounce everybody else's name. So Judicael Perrois, just in case anybody's listening and they don't know who this is, I would definitely recommend looking up this classical guitarist and pedagogue. He's not only a very, very fine concert guitarist, but he has produced some really, really valuable students. I mean, these are students that have won the top level competitions, and there's definitely something that he is doing right, and he's doing well in his teaching, because he's really the good teachers produce good students. Bottom line, so he's doing really well with that. And Ben, I was curious to.
You want to know what his special sauce is?
No, because
I'll tell you, it's he is so considerate. I think he's just so caring. I think that's his special sauce.
Well, that's a great quality.
I said it.
But
I said it.
I always remember I talked to you. I think I was just talking to you on the phone. It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't when I was with you in Berlin that time. We didn't. I don't think we talked about your studies with him. But you mentioned to me something that it really stuck with me, and I wanted you to sort of elaborate on it. You said something
Okay.
along the lines of he doesn't comment so much about your playing. He listens more. So he spends a lot of the time just listening. And to me, I'm curious about this approach.
Yeah, I
And
don't. Yeah.
yeah, if you take it just word for word, it's kind of like, okay, so he listens to your playing and he doesn't say anything. Okay, so he's not teaching you. But that cannot
Great
be.
job.
Yeah, well, that cannot be what is happening. I mean, bottom line,
Yeah.
this is very impressive
No.
stuff that he's doing. So.
No, for sure. And I mean, that could also be sort of maybe my impression coming from the teacher that I had before as well, Julian Gray at Peabody, who, I mean, he had a lot to say. I mean, this is not a bad thing either, but that was my impression with Judicault, was at least at the beginning, that it was kind of like the way I think said it to you too. And this is, again, it's just my impression. Somebody else could maybe say the exact opposite. I don't know. Maybe also with a younger student, he would not be, the way he was with me, right? Because I already was almost 30 at that point, or even in my early 30s when I was studying with him. But, the thing that I really, that was my impression, that he would listen, and it was like he had a capability to sift through the technical things that really didn't matter, and he was really listening for the music, kind of, or it was like he listened in this kind of non-judgmental way. I feel like that would, like, I just felt very comfortable playing for him, and so it was like when he would say something, it would be like, whoa, and I would right away, kind of do it or work on it or whatever. And I think there is something to be said. Maybe it's like the higher level teaching is actually, it's about doing less and not more, It's like just, letting the student really. And I also felt like, he was more like he let you come to him, kind of, and because he had a ton of students, and I mean, maybe not a ton, but obviously he has an amazing reputation, and he had a lot of students who wanted to study with him, and people coming from all over the world, in and out for a week, for 2 weeks, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like I said, like really just giving. I felt like it was really somehow, I don't know, it's hard to explain even. And I feel like at the end of the day, like it melted away. I had a lot of complexes around, I feel like I'm just like, I've been so selfish as a musician, so self-absorbed for so many years. And, at first I kind of needed it. You kind of need to have an ego to kind of just at least get your foot in the door or whatever. And then at some point, I don't know, it wasn't really helping anymore. It wasn't helpful. And he just was so present and so interested in the music, like that's what was interesting, was the music and the piece itself and the melody. And and I feel like that's the way it should be. But for some reason, it just struck me as something really maybe different than what I had experienced before.
I was interviewing somebody that was a teacher in China for a while, and they mentioned to me that something that was extremely different was the approach to practice, was that the student would be involved with the teacher in the practice room. So it wasn't just a lesson once a week, a studio lesson once a week, and the student goes and practices. It was throughout the week, there were regular practice sessions with the professor, which I found to be highly unusual. I only know the American system because that's all I really know as far as firsthand, and it was basically you come to your lesson. It's either every 2 weeks or it's every week, and what you do on your own time is entirely up to you. How you practice and how you approach everything, your whole timetable and practice methodology is entirely up to you. So it's more free like that than with Judicault.
Yeah, I mean, what I found with Judica was also, I think I should say, yeah, like at Peabody, I think there is a little bit of a dogma, like the Shearer dogma, the Shearer technique, Shearer, Shearer, Shearer.
There might be more like a more standardized way, streamlined approach with technique, I guess.
Yeah, and with Judica,
okay.
I felt like he was a little more like kind of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he just would like do a little thing here and there. I don't know. And again, maybe it's because I was like more advanced or something, older. I don't know. But he would just be like, yeah, what, just do whatever, little thing here, there. And I mean, and yeah, and he, very humble, I don't know, just humble guy, just really very sincere, just a really good, yeah, I would say kind of example of what a teacher can be, I would say. Yeah.
That's excellent. I thank you so much for sharing that. I was always curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people must be curious about it. I mean, of course I was too.
I never like to ask the question of like, hey, what was the secret? I mean, what was the main
what's
difference?
The secret sauce? Yeah.
No, just curious generally about various teaching styles and approaches, and I'm always it's always interesting to see how different approaches can produce a very, very good result, often opposing approaches.
And I have to mention also that, it's not just Judica, it's like there is the whole French system, which it's very rigorous, very intense. But I think from my experience, like, yeah, basically if you survive it, you're going to make it, like it's kind of the opposite of America.
So when you say it's more intense, Ben, what do you mean? What do you mean in comparison to?
God, I
the
feel
States?
like I'm generalizing so broadly. I'm going to get in so much trouble from somebody. But whatever. I mean, I just it's just my experience, and if it's wrong, somebody can let us know. I just feel like the French system.
Ben, don't worry. Anything that you say, the episode won't air for a couple of days. The episode won't air for a couple of days. So if you get canceled, you have at least a week.
Okay, good. Thank you. I can prepare for that a little. It's like it's very rigorous, and I mean, of course, in America, you can also get a rigorous classical music education, but there's not like the state funding behind it, and so when you go to one of these state conservatories in France, like you can't, before you can touch an instrument, you have to learn solfege for a year, And so anyway, there's a lot of good guitarists in France, and not all of them have studied with Judicaille, but he is definitely he has made a really important contribution, not just to the French guitar community, but obviously to the world guitar community. And again, I think it's because there's a real focus on the music. And not just guitar music, just music, very musical, talking about, I don't know, pianists and whatever, concerts that he's seen and whatever, just drawing on these kinds of experiences.
I want to ask you another question, and it's going to relate to your yoga and how you approach not only preparing for performances, but actually recovering from certain performances. I had what I believe a problem with wanting to succeed a little bit too much, like taking things a little bit too seriously. I would say in the years 2011, 2012, 2012, quite a while ago, I would enter like competitions of various sizes. I felt like I wanted it way too much.
Yeah.
To my surprise, sometimes I was even successful. Do you know what I mean, though, Ben? It was like doing well at that competition was everything. It defined me. It defined who I was.
Yes.
Like,
God.
I didn't feel like I was a, if I didn't succeed,
your value,
not a good person.
You placed your entire value on the result of the competition as a human being. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I want to say honestly that I remember a couple of opportunities where I think I ready to play, but this mental approach actually probably cost me either a place, or in one instance it cost me going from a semifinal to a final. Just this, it was like a block,
Totally.
because these contests, I know there's other things that are involved. I mean, you're playing for judges, and who knows what would have happened if I would have played differently. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that wasn't what was happening. But I really felt like I was not playing in the most kind of honest and sincere way, because I had this huge distraction hanging over me, and the huge distraction was that just I wanted it way too much. You cannot have that inside your head when you're coming out there and you want to be as expressive as you possibly can. Your end goal is what? I mean, you want to, whether it's judges or it's an audience, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you want to come in there, you want to yourself be in the moment, moved by the music. You want to move other people by the music. And I believe that we want to strive to have every single note as sincere as possible, meaning that every single note to us has meaning. I mean, we're expressive in every moment, we're present in every moment, we're interacting with the space that's around us. And if you're afraid that you won't succeed, or you won't live up to these standards that you've set for yourself, these goals that you've set for yourself, that's not happening. You have a performance that's like slightly numb. What are your comments on that, and how has yoga helped you to sort of survive feelings like that?
First of all, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's I think that's important to talk about, because I've had very similar experiences. And it cost me a lot, and it was a very difficult time in my life when when I went from doing competitions and somehow being able to focus on what was important, which was not the prize money, not the recognition, whatever else would come along with that, but really focusing on making the most beautiful music possible and playing just better than I did yesterday. Let me see if I can really just touch somebody's heart today. When I lost that focus, I lost everything, in a way, so to speak. And I certainly lost competitions. In yoga, I think there's a concept in a few Eastern spiritual traditions, including I think the crux of the Bhagavad Gita is basically you do your work and then you let go of the result. I mean, in that sense, it's you give it to God, but then you also have in Tao, the Tao Te Ching, it's like the master does her work and then lets go of the result, and just like lets go or something. I forget what it's a very similar thing, basically, in modern terms, can we focus on the process and not the result? And that's it. I mean, focusing on the result causes so much, I would say it causes a lot of tension. It causes tension in the body. You seize up because you're literally holding on to something that's not there, which is a result in the future that may or may not come, So, when you can let go of the result and then just play the damn music, it's liberating on so many levels. And that's actually what people that's what people connect with as well, whether it's a judge or an audience member, it's human beings. They see that it's refreshing because we all have that potential to be like, I mean, this is also kind of yoga-ish, whatever, spiritual-ish kind of talk. We all have that potential to, be totally free in the moment and just totally express ourselves and like be present and, really go for it and do something really, really inspiring and amazing, and I think we naturally just connect with that. It when you see it, and yeah, I think that's, but maybe this is just what you have to go through as a musician. You have to go through these phases, and maybe some people just learn it earlier, like maybe some of these kids, like I'm talking about, who go through the system in France, or in Europe, you know, unlike us who got into the game relatively later ish, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
that maybe they go through that when they're 10 years old, 12 years old or something, 14 years old, 16 years old, you know,
That'd
and
be
then
nice.
by the time, you know, by the time, I don't know if it's better or worse, you know, because at the same time you're developing, you know, brain and whatever, and you have to go through these. I don't know, who knows what's better or worse, but and maybe it's the same for everybody. Who and honestly, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think we all go through these phases, and I think I recently had an artist friend just tell me like it's you're at exactly the point where you're supposed to be. Like if you hadn't had all these things happen to you in the past, you wouldn't be where you are now. You wouldn't have the understanding, and you know, it's all happening in the unfolding in the way it should.
I learn new things from you every time we sit down and we talk. It's really great. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
man.
for coming on.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, you know, having the chance to have a conversation with you, and you know that we're both in Germany, and we both, you know, did our studies in Baltimore. It's great. You know, it's hilarious to get to kind of. It's like a blast from the past every time, and then it's also like, you know, talking sort of about the whatever direction we might be moving in the future. You know, so it's pretty cool, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.